Hello friends, welcome to my channel Language and Life Skills. I am Matthew Attikanil. Today I will present to you the story of King Lear. King Lear, the ultimate royal family tragedy. One of the great tragedies of Shakespeare. King Lear was the king of England. He was old and he wanted to retire from active care of the country. And so he decided to divide his kingdom among his three daughters, Guinevere, Regan and Cordelia. And he said he will keep the royal title and live in turn in the castles of his daughters. And he would be attended by a company of 100 knights. Among the three daughters, the youngest Cordelia was the dearest to him and loved him more than the other two. And before dividing the kingdom, he called all the three daughters and he asked them a question. How much do you love me? Each one declared. The first two, Guinevere and Regan, made inflated claims of their love for him. They told him they loved him more than their life, more than their husbands, etc. But when it came to Cordelia, the youngest, she could not declare her love in words. She could not keep her heart to her mouth, as she said. And she said honestly that she loved him as a daughter should, as much as a daughter should. The proud and vain king was infuriated at this reply and promptly disinherited her. He told her she would have no part in her kingdom and she would be married without a dowry and banished her out of his presence. Now good Kent, Lord Kent, tried to plead with him, tried to reason with him, but he would not listen, and he was very angry with Kent for interfering and banished him on pain of death out of his kingdom. And Cordelia departed from England with the king of France, who happily married her, and she went to live in France. Now began the real drama, the real tragedy. The two elder daughters, as they got the reins of the kingdom in their hand, changed their colors. They began to deal with the king in a very shabby manner and cruel manner. They reduced the number of his knights and they abused his servants. They kept the king waiting at their doors, at their castle doors, even in wind, rain and raging storm. And the king was shocked. He abused them with the bitter words of a father. In this kind of very wicked treatment, the king lost his mind and became mad. He wandered about in the storm, accompanied by the courtful. This courtful was his emotional support, consoling him and interpreting for him the many puzzles of life. Now the king had two royal men, nobles who were his very faithful friends. One of them was Kent, as we already saw. Kent remained faithful to the king even when he was banished. He came back disguised as a servant and joined the company of the king and was of great service to him. The king did not realize this. It was the great noble Kent who was on his service. Now, Lord Gloucester, he had also tried to help the king, yet sheltered him, and for this he was severely punished. He was blinded in the presence of his own son. This Gloucester had two sons, Edgar, the elder one and the inheritor of his fortunes, Edgar, and Edmund, the younger one, who was an illegitimate child, a bastard, and therefore he could not inherit any of his wealth. And Edmund was filled with bitterness because of his social stigma. And he joined the army. He climbed up in his career. He curried favor with the husbands of the two daughters, and he rose to be the commander of the English army. And he carried on secretly a love affair with both Regan and Goneril, eventually turning them against each other out of jealousy and plotting each other's death. He was very successful in his political and army career, and he managed to capture King Lear and Cordelia in a battle that ensued little later. Now Cordelia had gone to France as the Queen of France. She was very well honored there, and she was very sad to hear about her father. She came back with an army from France and landed in Lover and fought for the king. But the British army defeated the French army, and both Lear and Cordelia were captured. And it is at this time that Edgar was the eldest son of Gloucester and was going around as a mad vagabond. He reappeared on the scene and he challenged Edmund to a duel, and he fought valiantly, and Edmund was fatally wounded. And as he was dying, he repented of his many crimes, and he passed an order to save both King Lear and Cordelia from execution. But it was too late for Cordelia, as we shall see later. Now, Cordelia remained loyal to her father, even though he was very unjust to her. Goneril poisoned her younger sister Regan and herself committed suicide. And with the death of Edmund, after the duel with Edgar, the love triangle was disentangled and England enjoyed peace under new rule. The play ends with a heart-rending scene of King Lear carrying the lifeless body of Cordelia onto the stage. Now let us see some critical comments about the main characters of this tragedy. Let's take King Lear, the central character. His lack of judgment and his passion are very clear from the play. This tragedy is a cocktail of rage, passion, ingratitude, and lust. The king is foolish in asking his daughter to declare his love for him in words, and is very badly deceived by the declaration of the two elder sisters, very insincere, flattering declarations. And he flies into a rage when he hears the simple, sincere declaration of Cordelia that she loves him as a daughter should. And very unreasonably, he disinherits her and sends her away to France without a dowry. He is also unwilling to listen to the pleading of Lord Kent, whom he banishes very unjustly from the kingdom. Fortunately for King Lear, Kent remains faithful and comes back to him disguised as a servant. Lear is under many delusions. He knows neither himself nor his daughters. He is a poor judge of characters. He misjudges good characters and rewards the evil characters of Goneril and Regan. He is also under delusion about being able to have self-respect and dignity after giving away the powers of his kingdom to his daughters. He cuts indeed a pathetic figure and becomes insane, mad, because he could not keep with the terrible situation. The irony of the play is that the only loving daughter, Cordelia, is grossly misunderstood and mistreated by him. Is Lear a victim or a villain? To one part of the play, Lear says, I am more sinned against than sinning. That is, he is less of a villain and more of a victim. Definitely the atrocities done against him by his daughters are very many and terrible. But King Lear has a share of faults, weaknesses and follies. He is under the delusion that he could keep his self-respect without his kingly power. He was proud and vain and subject to fits of passion. And he is a poor judge of character, as we have already said. He is roundly misled by his flattering daughters. He had a huge ego, which was not flattered by the sincere daughter Cordelia, and she paid for it. At the center of this play is filial ingratitude and the unnatural cruelty of his daughters. This is no simple ingratitude, it's a vicious ingratitude, where the daughters are taunting him, humiliating him, keeping him waiting at the castle, treating him with no dignity. He is kept out of their doors in rain and wind and storm. And is so angry with them that he invokes infertility into them. These two daughters are also unfaithful to their husbands. They are carrying on a clandestine love affair with Edmund. And then finally they turn against each other and they bring about their own ruins. Now coming to Edmund, he is one of the great villains of Shakespeare. The origin of his villainy is his illegitimate birth. He is a bastard. And this status has a very severe impact on his psyche. He turns against society, against his family, and against the king. He plots against his brother Edgar, manages to drive him out of his home and cause mistrust between him and his father. He is so cruel as to preside over the blinding of his own father, Lord Gloucester, and he simultaneously carries on an affair with the two sisters, setting each of them against the other. Well, the play tells us that personal and family disorders do not remain just private. They impact society in a very big way, in tragic ways. So it is a lesson to philandering men. Now we come to the sweetest character of this play, that is Cordelia, loveliest character. Her innocence, sincere love and dedication stand out. And this is in sharp contrast with the two evil sisters. In spite of great injustice and humiliation, she remains loving, forgiving and faithful to her father. She is totally free from bitterness and she is full of tender love till the end. Unfortunately, the French army could not win over the British army, and King Lear and Cordelia were captured. Her death was inevitable in this world of wickedness and of atrocities. Let the sweet scent of our gentle nature and virtue linger in our minds and make us forget the atrocities of this tragedy as we close this session. If you like this presentation, please subscribe. So bye till another time.